Welcome to the Growth Boss Podcast, where we seek out the secrets to high-performing campaigns from some of the smartest marketers in the world. I'm your host, Jared Smith. Today, I have Charles Floate with me, and we're going to talk about Parasite SEO, AI, link building, and growing family businesses. Charles is an SEO legend based in Chiang Mai, Thailand. He has worked with major clients across the globe, spoken at over 40 conferences, and has a strong social media following. He's known for black hat strategies, cutting edge case studies and tutorials, and is one of the first, believe it or not, guests that I wanted to have on the show. So I'm super excited to have him here today. Charles, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Jared, as well. Thank you for making me one of those first guests.
Awesome. So Charles, I want to start with Parasite SEO, which is something you've really leaned into in the last couple years. I would say you're probably one of the most foremost experts in that area. Talk to us about what Parasite SEO is and also how we can dominate with it in 2025.
Yeah, for sure. So Google's algorithm has slowly been ticking up, if you like, more and more towards being dominated by one signal, which is actually a group of signals, which is links. And underneath that, links turns into authority once you get enough of them, right? And Google's kind of tuned authority to such an extent that it is seen as an anti-spam signal, it is seen as a trust signal, as a ranking factor, as even to some extent now we've seen as a fact-checking signal in political search and things like that and stuff, right? Which takes the context even more crazy when you think about it in the real life scenarios. Because Google has tuned the algorithm so much towards links and authority, it just means that if you have got a page on a higher domain authority than another page, it is just more than likely that that page is going to rank. So if you're going into the average niche, right, your competition isn't going to be that huge. Yes, you might have an Amazon or an eBay page or something like that in the SERP, but realistically, the average niche competitor is probably going to be like DR4 to DR50 kind of thing, right? So if you can immediately go into a SERP, go into a niche and pay for pages or build pages on free sites like Reddit and LinkedIn, specifically Reddit as well, has just got turbo boosted by Google and their backdoor kind of deal that they've had over the last kind of year to kind of boost their stock as well as a result. And it is all kind of this weird interlinked, almost conspiracy theory when you put your real kind of tinfoil hat on. But if you can build or buy a page on a higher domain authority than your average niche competitor, you are more than likely going to dominate that average niche competitor, and thus you're going to dominate your niche. So Google's actually tuned the algorithm away from kind of these heavy content signals and away from interlinking and all of this kind of stuff, and just towards this point that authority is such a signal that it outweighs basically every other signal inside the algorithm. So again, if you can just exploit that, you will and can dominate niches literally overnight in some cases. And because, again, like I said, it counts as an anti-spam, anti-hacker, trust signal, all of that kind of thing, Google will index those pages straight away. There's no filtering, there's no additional checks, there's no additional index requirements or stuff. Those pages, in some cases as well, will get indexed and go to top 3 in the same hour that you publish them. Which again, if you've got your own small little niche blog, that's basically impossible to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. I love it. And I've been able to rank a number of parasites because of the things that you've taught. For somebody that, again, is just getting involved in this, they are in maybe a small niche. How do you find these authority websites? What's like the best first step to be like, okay, here's how I actually go out and find something?
Yeah, so I always try and do reverse engineering of that topic first. So I'll go and figure out what would be the biggest sites that would work the best in X niche, right? And you're always going to have the biggest sites in the world being the best sites, right? So like the Reddits, the YouTubes, that kind of stuff. And then on the paid side, if you can do it, if you can pay for a post on the New York Times or Forbes or the BBC or things like that, those articles are very likely going to rank and outrank anything else on the planet, basically, especially if at the page level you don't have a very high link count. However, like I said, I like to try and go into a topic and try and figure out or reverse engineer which sites are going to be the most impactful in that topic. So you'll have some sites that rank really, really well for casino keywords. You'll have some sites that rank really, really well for health keywords or tech keywords or things like that, right? And we'll kind of build an overlapping database and just try and figure out which site has got the highest ROI for that keyword as well. Because it also comes into consideration about how much it's going to cost you if you're buying the page from these parasites, right? Again, I just mentioned kind of, the New York Times and BBC and stuff. Those publications, some of them charge $15,000 for you to get an editorial on their site, right?
Yeah.
If you're ranking for a keyword with that page, if you're only getting like 1,000 clicks a month or something, it's probably not really worth a $15,000 investment, right? But in some niches, that's pennies on the dollar, right? If you're talking things like crypto or the financial industry or gambling industries and things like that, $15,000 is, an error in an ad campaign, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's kind of stuff like that where the ROI kind of is massive individually as well. And it's got to a point now where there's a lot of big agencies and companies that are realizing, actually, if we just acquire some of these websites, right, they don't realize the gold mine that these publishers are sitting on. And us as SEOs can fully exploit the fact that we can acquire or in some cases partner with those sites.
I love it. Now, with the content creation side, when you've identified a site, you're like, okay, this is a great site. It's a couple $1,000s that works with my budget. How will you create the content for your article on that site? Will you use AI? If so, what tools? Or are you going to go kind of the human written route?
Yeah, so it's dependent on the page, right? So the more valuable the page, the more likely we're just going to go 100% human written, because it's less so about actually optimizing the pages, because again, it's the domain authority that's ranking them, right? You just kind of need to hit those KPIs to allow the page to rank. But realistically, again, because it's also on another person's site, you don't have in a lot of cases anyway, you don't have the necessary tools to do things like CRO or stuff like that, right? To actually get the optimal clicks out of those pages. So we'll often try and, at least in the first kind of opening paragraphs, we'll try and have some sort of a CTA or some way of just immediately taking the user off of that page and straight through to the page that's actually going to make us our money, right? But in general, like I said, the higher profit, the more likely it's going to be human written, and kind of the less pages we care about. In a lot of cases as well, we'll build supporting pages. So we'll build a parasite that's for the exact same keyword, but actually it's going to be supporting another parasite, and it's probably going to rank like a long tail variant maybe and stuff like that, but we don't really care about it because it was $100 or something, right?
Sure.
And the main aim is to support the main parasite that was $2,000 or $5,000 or something stupid like that, right? But in a lot of those cases, that will just be almost 100% AI. And a lot of the time we're just using the main article as a seed article to rewrite into the next kind of down the chain. And again, just using human editors to make sure that everything's kind of unique, everything still makes sense, everything's kind of flowing through to the CTAs and stuff like that. With tools, a lot of the time now, we're literally just using in-doc editors. So it literally just means kind of Chrome extensions and stuff like that, or ChatGPT layered into the research. So it just basically means that the humans need to edit it, but you can use ChatGPT for editing or opening paragraphs or conclusions and things like that. They just need to make sure that it's hitting originality KPIs as well.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. And because these sites have a strong authority domain rating, are you building links into these pages as well? Or do you just kind of write it and they rank quickly on their own?
Yeah, a lot of the time they just rank on their own, right?
Okay.
It's to some extent a kind of churn and burn style, but over the course of, say for like 2 to 3 years or something, you'll have 20 to 30% of your pages still ranking. And then you'll have 50% of the pages ranking for long tail variants anyway and stuff, right? So if you can do a kind of compounding campaign, which is what we've been trying to do actively over the last several years, since this has been working massively, kind of pre-HCU in kind of August and stuff, that kind of period. Since then, we've just been able to kind of stack pages that now, even if the main kind of page of the campaign fell off, that campaign is still paying us a couple K per month, right? So, and that's grown to the point now that we have got 40, 50 active campaigns running at any one point. And some of the campaigns where some of them might fall off, they can easily be replaced now because our process is so much more efficient and we should outperform the original campaign. So sometimes now we're just going back in and repeating ourselves, but to a better degree, better sites, better inventory, better deals, better pages, better SEO, better linking, the whole kind of shebang. And also we have data points now as well. That's another point which makes it even better, is because these campaigns are so cheap and because it's so easy to generate clicks and stuff like that, you generate the data that allows you to see which keywords are the most profitable, which pages are generating you the most profit, which sites are working the best. You can test CTAs, you can test writing, you can test all sorts of things that you can't necessarily do on one website, because you can literally do this on potentially thousands of websites if you really want to go for it,
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. And, even though Charles references these major industries like crypto and gambling, the financial industry, this works exceptionally well in every market. And Charles, I'm sure you've seen it in every market, but I've used this for friends that are doctors. I mean, you can use it for lawyers. You can literally use it in any industry, and it's so effective.
Yeah, 100%. I was about to say that we've had several lawyers actually ranking using this methodology, and we've had a load of other niches that I wouldn't even have thought of. And then when it comes to international and non-English SERPs, you're talking even better effects, because those algorithms are several years behind, but they still take into effect the authority kind of effects and stuff, right? So you compound that with weak content signals in those algorithms, because they don't have kind of the NLP and all this additional data processing that they do in English. And they have weaker anti-spam teams, weaker blacklists, all of this kind of stuff, right? I actually saw a case study from Japan, I think it was several years ago, where Google in America had penalized something like 500,000 websites in the year for that year. And bear in mind, that was a low number. Nowadays, sometimes that could be in a month, right? But in Japan, in that same year of them penalizing 500,000 websites, they penalized 6 or 7 in the whole of Japan. So you can imagine, you can imagine that your hit rate as well, even if you are just doing the wildest, most black hat techniques and stuff, you're actually less likely to get manually penalized over there than you are doing less shady stuff in the US, right?
Yeah, 100%. Now, one of the things I have heard you talk about when you get your Parasite article live is try to get internal links from that same website. Sometimes you can even pay the editor or the webmaster. In addition to that, are there any other little hacks that you recommend people take advantage of when they publish articles on Parasite sites?
When it comes to the internal linking, make sure that you just go for the most authoritative internal links, right? So most people are like, so I'm doing a page on casinos. I need to find other pages about casinos to internally link. No, you're on a DR95 site. You just find other pages that have got 5,000 referring domains and internally link it back to your page. And it does turbo boost the hell out of it, because relevance doesn't matter at that stage, right? At that authority level. Other kind of tips and stuff. Again, the one that I kind of talked about earlier is kind of stacking Parasite pages. So a lot of people just tend to go after that main keyword and just target that, find sites for that kind of thing. What we like to do is try and find all the variants that we could look to target, try and do some light calculations, especially when we've got data for campaigns, about how much those variants could possibly earn us. And in some cases, if you have a variant that's buy versus the generic term, you want to rank for buy more than you want to rank for the generic term, because you'll have a 20 times higher conversion rate, right? So we found a lot of the time that we've picked up some maybe smaller sites, like I said, $50 to a kind of $200 range for the post, but we've optimized it slightly away from the main keyword and more for the variant. And then we've just done that again throughout the different kind of posts we're doing. And now we take number one for all of these different variants. And we use them to all link to the main page, which is then ranking the main page for the main keyword as well. So we've taken over every variant there is for the keyword, and we're ranking number 1, which is supported by all of those other pages that are doing the variant. So you can stack this kind of out to the point where it's really crazy. And I'm starting to actually see a lot of kind of bigger agencies and bigger companies who have got access to crazy inventory and stuff like that just be 9 out of 10 in the SERP, right? Like they're owning the SERP. It's a crazy degree. And I think that kind of concentration is reflective of the world, weirdly. Like Google is very much so a reflection of the real world, kind of concentrating and compounding into this, weird kind of mess. But I think that Google's way more accelerated, right? Like it's just straight killed the little guy. In a lot of cases. And I don't really see that recovering as well.
Yeah. And that's where, again, the little guy can still win. He just has to look at what's working in the search results and,
Exactly.
Utilize it. Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, you might have to kind of attach yourself to the big guy with Parasite. Right?
Completely. 100%. Switching gears to link building. I think that's an area a lot of business owners get stuck up on. I noticed, I was going through your latest threads on X, that you made an investment in a link building company. Maybe you could start by talking about that, and then I'd like to kind of dig into specific tactics that you're recommending in 2025.
Yeah, for sure. So, long story short, I had a link building agency for a long time. I sold that to a company that is now listed on the NASDAQ, and they do crazy big business deals, but they definitely do not need me anymore, right? Sure. However, I was under a non-compete for several years, right? A couple of years ago, that non-compete ended, but I didn't really want to build an agency anymore. And there wasn't really any companies on the market that massively excited me, and I was way too focused down the AI ChatGPT rabbit hole to kind of be caring about links at the time, to be fair. However, last year I got approached by another very well-known person in SEO, which is Nemanja Fox from PBN Fox, who's pretty well known, to be fair, in SEO, and is one of the kind of OGs from PBNs and that kind of stuff back in the day. Did a lot of stuff with Diggity. He said he'd invest in this platform. They were making sure that they only had a very small team, and that they were trying to use AI to kind of power everything from the outreach to some of the chat agents to the actual order systems to the customer support to all sorts of stuff going on, right? And it kind of impressed me at how big this system was that they'd created for the customer base that they had, to be fair, right? So I was like, why are you guys not focusing on the US market? Why are you focusing on Europe? Why are you not doing X, Y, and Z, right? And they just turned around and go, why are you not working with us? Like, what the hell, we need some help here, obviously, like we're drowning.
Yeah.
So I said, let me come in. You guys have got way too much work on your plate, just building the product and the platform and everything, and let me handle the marketing. And so that's what I've done. We're now doing this big kind of contract. We've been able to scale rapidly. In the last 6 months, I think we've managed to hit several $100,000 in revenue per month already.
Nice.
And we're looking to scale it kind of to the moon from here. But again, it's all about kind of efficiency, scalability, speed, and price point as well. Like, we've seen so many marketplaces, so many services, and I do, again, probably see it as kind of a reflection of the world. It's this inflationary system that we're kind of living in, and it's fair enough, right? But some agencies have taken the piss a little bit, to be fair, and have jacked up their prices by magnitudes of 100 to 200%. So we've baked in a set limit on how much the publisher and how much the marketplace can kind of set that increase of the price, so that hopefully we are always the price matched cheapest link out there in the world for that website, right? And we're trying to, with some sites as well, get exclusivity arrangements so that not only are we actually going to have them in our inventory and we can sell them on an exclusivity deal that allows us to get really good pricing, really good everything for people, but B, we're also going to hopefully use that as a lead generation tactic. So did you know that anybody who does outreach to these websites that you have an exclusivity agreement with, they then refer them to you, right?
Love that.
So I figured this whole system out where basically our publishers are referring customers to us.
Yeah, I love that. Very cool.
Yeah, so we've been able to kind of build out this huge system, and that's what's been able to growth hackers for the last several months. And now we're looking to kind of just onboard as many agencies and stuff and really hit America and kind of the bigger European and Asian markets as well.
I love it. So what are the top tactics, link building tactics, that you believe are going to be big in 2025?
So the number one tactic that you have to go to and you have to cover straight away, because everybody talks about it, unfortunately, it's digital PR, right? If you search SEO or if you talk to anyone about SEO, you cannot get away from that word for the last year and a half, 2 years, whatever it is. I partly blame Ferry from Search Intelligence because he sponsors everybody. Yeah. And so his word is just everywhere. And especially since he got digital.pr, that is when it went downhill. But I definitely think that digital PR, I do see the hype and everything slightly falling off to some extent. But again, because Google's just tuned authority to such an extent, if you can get those big, juicy authority links, and because digital PR on average, you're paying a few $100s per placement or something like that on kind of average per link, it means that actually in the big scalability, those links could be worth thousands of dollars, but you've just paid kind of pennies in the dollars for the digital PR campaign because you have to do that creative aspect, right? But again, AI is transcending and augmenting that ideation and creativity process so much that it now becomes, to some extent, just kind of fishing ideas out of the AI generated sandy, kind of sifting through a tray of crap until you find the 1 or 2 pieces of gold that the AI actually has generated.
Yeah, I love it. And what else? Aside of digital PR, are you sprinkling, guest posts in there and niche edits and maybe a little forum link here and there? Or are you really just kind of going after the digital PR?
No, yeah, so 100%. So I would say the second thing would be diversification. So 100% making sure that you're not just getting the same link sources, because Google's anti-spam algorithms and kind of the triggers that they have got inside of that algorithm now have gotten quite advanced to the point that if you are just getting one link source, we have seen a lot of manual penalties come out, right? Seen a lot of manual penalties just for people abusing link insertions, just for people abusing PBNs, just for people abusing blog comments and stuff like that even. But again, it's a lot more of scaled abuse. So the average person is not going to be building 1 million backlinks anytime soon.
Right.
And ideally, you're not going to be buying really terrible stuff that is going to be on blacklists and that is going to be routinely disavowed and routinely, again, be picked up and flagged and triggered by Google and get your site hit. So it is the third thing, and kind of in tandem with diversification, is quality over quantity. And it's just getting more and more to that point, because also, as the fourth thing, which is tied, everything's tied together, the fourth thing would be neutrality, right? So Google has just made links more and more neutral over the last several years. So probably pre-Penguin, everybody just used to spam the hell out of everything. Penguin hit, and then tons of links became toxic. So Google would just be like, you're getting slapped, your page is getting slapped, your site's getting slapped, because you have these toxic links, right? And then slowly since then, over the last kind of 12 years or so, since Penguin, 13 years even now, Google has moved more and more towards the point that some links are just completely neutralized. So instead of being toxic or positive, the signals are just neutral, they're flat, they don't send anything, right? And that's become more and more of a point. So there's kind of a balance, and I talked about this the other day, but there's kind of a balance between, yes, some links are now going to be neutralized, but also it means that you're not going to get your site or pages hit as well so much, right? So some links just flat out aren't going to work as well, but some links aren't going to get your site penalized and your clients in trouble and all that kind of stuff, right? So there is kind of balance and offset to both, but it just means you have to do more and more analysis of the links of your site, of which pages they should be building to, all of that kind of stuff. And analysis is probably the fifth thing, because SERP analysis is also the biggest thing. And too many people don't do competitor and SERP analysis before they actually build the links to their own site, because you should take into consideration, does that page even need links, right? When I go and Google my category page for this e-commerce site, do all of my other competitors have RD to that category page? If no, then I probably don't want to be building RD to my category page, right? You probably want to build it to the supporting content, which has internal links to the
Absolutely.
page. But the idea is that you're just doing everything on analysis and kind of building in this math to be doing everything in the correct way. Because again, Google baked in consensus, which is the sixth thing on the list. Google baked in consensus several years ago, which basically means that everything in the SERP needs to be the same, which will not make a huge amount of sense when Google is telling you that you need to make unique content and it needs to be original and all this kind of stuff. Because it actually does need to, at some point, be the same as everybody else. And I do think that's not the best for all sorts of reasons around science and politics and stuff and things, because it means that the truth is buried if there's overwhelming information about previous factual stuff and things. Anyway, we could go down a complete rabbit hole about that. The seventh thing about links is pricing. So again, like I said earlier, it's not just the marketplaces going up with prices, it's the bloggers, it's the site owners, it's the editors, it's the people who have started acquiring the sites and they're selling the links off themselves. All of that, they've seen the market increase, they've seen inflation, they've seen everything. They know that they can get more money for links now. So the link that used to be $30, they're now asking $100, you know? So you need to kind of bake that into your own pricing and bake that into your own clients and stuff like that as well. That actually link building now will be more expensive. And actually, thanks to the digital PR guys, the top level links are even more expensive, right? If you want to go buy Forbes and BBC and this and this stuff, you can't do the $1,000 or $2,000 posts anymore.
Right.
It's going to be $5,000 to $15,000. Right?
Yep. which is ridiculous. I remember those days, and I wish I would have taken better advantage of those $1,000 Forbes links in those days too.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Okay, switching gears to AI content creation. This is, again, another category you've spent a lot of time mastering, figuring out. You know, my go-to these days has really been Surfer. I've been very happy with that content, but you know, it's 10, 15 bucks, you know, for a credit for an article. Obviously, if I just jump into ChatGPT, it does great content as well for a penny. Talk to us about how you're creating content these days with AI.
Yeah, I definitely think that, especially with the recent Chinese models being released and the new Gemini Flash model and stuff from Google, I think it's going to be very tough for some of these SEO tools to be arguing the prices that they're currently arguing for stuff when you can generate, you know, 1 million words of content for 10 cents from some of the Chinese models now. Like, that's just ridiculous, right? So I think that the pricing point and kind of the scalability point will mean that even if 95% of the stuff is crap, that 5%, because it's so cheap, will just be better than what humans have done. And I think that's a good reflection of AI in general, that we're getting to the point with content, and that will just get to the point with everything else in life, to be fair, with AI and potentially AGI in kind of, you know, 10 years or so. But I do think that AI content from Google's perspective is a pain in the ass because of the resources it takes up and their index bloat and things and stuff. Like, their index has gone up something like 200 times in the last 3 years, which is way higher or way more rapid rate than they have ever experienced in their history. And it's also why they're committing so much to building data centers as well. A lot of people think that the data centers are purely the chips for AI and stuff. And yeah, that is a lot of it, but it's also storage for all of the data and stuff that they're building, and the data for the content that they've got on other platforms and stuff as well. So I see AI content becoming the norm for everybody, right? Like, especially as it gets better, I think that in some way or another, your article is going to be at least influenced by AI, in that meaning that you might have looked at Perplexity to kind of figure out some of the statistics and analysis and additional things that you didn't even know about, right? And bear in mind that one thing that I think is really cool is that if you use Perplexity Pro with reasoning and stuff, you can plug in your entire article, pre-edit, and actually ask it to find additional things and stuff that you would have never thought about. And you didn't even know about that topic as potentially an expert in that topic, right?
Yes.
And that will blow up the amount of information that is available to the world. But again, I think it's kind of the adoption as well. And that adoption will take more and more time, but it's dependent on how quick the advancements are. And they're starting to slow down a little bit. I'm not 100% sure on how quick they are. But again, just because of the cheapness that has come out of the Gemini model and the DeepSeek models, I think it's kind of take over the SEO world if it hasn't already, to be fair.
Yeah. Fair enough. One of the things I want to talk about is growing a family business. One of my big projects is also a family business. Based on what I read earlier on your, I think, LinkedIn profile, your family company is worth about 70 million. I think it's pounds. You're looking to grow it to $1 billion. Walk us through what that's been like working with your family, and also kind of what the plan is to 10x that company to $1 billion.
Yeah, for sure. That valuation is probably a bit old, so we are probably worth maybe double that or something now.
Wow.
But yeah, so we have grown at a very advanced rate. I will say that it has slowed down a little bit now, but during COVID, we had massive growth just because we were the only company in the UK that could do what we were doing in the UK at the time. Every other competitor had closed down their warehouse and closed down everything else, and we could still operate. So that allowed us to have growth where they couldn't fulfill their order books. We could, right? Like, that just gives you kind of a monopoly on the market. But working with family is difficult to some extent. I work with my mom and my stepdad, and then my granddad's an investor, but he doesn't really do much. And then I work a little bit with like my aunt and my uncle and stuff, come into the business a little bit every now and then and things, and kind of do some bits and pieces. We manufacture furniture in the UK. So we have 2 factories in the UK. One's a wood mill, so we actually make our own wood. And that was as a result of Brexit and the war in Ukraine, because we were getting our wood from Serbia. Then we got tariffs. Then we got told we can't actually do it at all because it's from Russia or something. Yeah. Whole massive scenario that we had to kind of solve. And again, problem solving is the number one thing. Problem solving in crisis is probably the number one thing, because there is always, especially in family businesses of any kind of size and scale, because it is literally powering your family, right? And if things do go wrong, that's your family going wrong, right?
Right.
Then crisis management and crisis times and things like that, and problem solving abilities and things, becomes a massive asset, because otherwise it just becomes a blame game. And that's the worst thing you can do. And I've seen it in other family businesses, because I have friends that have families that own a really successful restaurant or something like that, right? And they go out of business 2 years later because the mom and dad are screaming at each other in the kitchen every single night, right? And
Completely.
Customers don't want to go. Nobody wants to go. It's not a good time. It's not nothing's good, right? So that's the number one rule. No raising your voice, no shouting, and then keeping scheduled meetings, making sure that we've got emergency meetings, making sure there are protocols in place for everything, dealing with stuff. We've had all sorts of things happen, right? We've had like our IT guy get arrested. We had our people just not show up for work. We had, the government say they give us a grant and then that grant never got given, but we spent the money. Like all of this stuff happens, and you just have to deal with it, because otherwise it will break your family up, literally.
Completely.
But when it all goes 100% according to plan, it can also be the best thing ever, right? Because you have ultimate trust. You know your business partner isn't going to fuck you over and stuff like that, and things, and things that can be a horrible situation, which does routinely happen all the time in the world. And there's kind of all these scenarios which just make it a kind of nice and enjoyable place. And also the main perk is you get to spend time with your family when everybody else is working, right? Yeah,
100%. As you look forward to scaling, what does the strategy look like? Is it, hey, we got to launch a bunch of new products? Is it we have to acquire a couple companies? How do you get to that $1 billion mark?
Yeah, so a lot of it is design and innovation. So being the first to market with things. So for example, I don't know if you've been into furniture shops or anything like that in the last kind of 5 years or so. We were the first ones in the UK, at least. I don't want to say internationally, I'd have no idea, but we were the first in the UK to have the product QR codes. So we basically created a white label system that for every customer that we have, we set you up with your own kind of logos and stuff. You put QR codes in your store. The customer walks by, I really like that product, but I wonder what it looked like in this fabric or in this color or something like that. They scan the QR code, they get the big thing on their phone, and they can just go through it. And in some cases, what we've done is they've actually baked in displays into the store. So you can go and flick through all the different products and see it on the big screen, kind of get an option into it. And you can also then, we've baked in things like delivery and stock checking and all sorts of stuff. So you can actually see if it's in stock, when it's ready for delivery and things like that. And one benefit of being in the UK is you can do next day delivery of even massive items anywhere in the UK, basically.
Sure.
Because it takes maximum 5 to 6 hours drive, right? Yep. So customers will pay for delivery of especially kind of larger furniture items that are several $1,000s. They will pay for next day delivery very frequently. Being able to immediately show them, yes, this product is available in your house tomorrow, that sales conversion goes up 2-3 times.
Huge. Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. As somebody who's definitely on the cutting edge of all things SEO, I'm curious what you found for breaking the code of getting stuff ranked in ChatGPT. Obviously a lot of people are using it these days. I'm using it all the time. How do we get websites or our brands mentioned?
Reverse engineering, the number one thing, right? So we figured out several years ago that for the models that were not connected to the web, that you basically had to seed training data. So, and this is where it starts to get a bit complicated, right? So ChatGPT, OpenAI, all these models are trained on data. And we knew for a long, long time that they were stealing data, to be fair.
Yeah, sure.
And we knew to some extent where they were stealing data from, right? So we knew that with Meta, that we knew for a long time in Meta, before all this news came out that they were torrenting stuff, that they were torrenting things because Llama had torrent watermarks. So I don't know if you've ever downloaded a torrent. When you look at one of the notepad files, it'll come up with loads of hashtags and ASCII art and things. Llama model started outputting that ASCII watermarks from torrent sites. So we knew that they were training that data, right? So the exact same goes back to what you just said about seeding your own data into ChatGPT. You have to figure out where ChatGPT is pulling that information from and then seed your data into those sources. Nowadays, it's getting to the point where a lot of it is just search augmented. So that means that basically you have to rank for the positions in the SERPs anyway, for those kind of niche keywords. And again, that's where Parasite SEO comes really, really well into play. B, you have to have multiple sources. So you can't just build one page, which again means that traditional SEO is out the window anyway, because you have to do some form of Parasite SEO or something, because you need multiple pages on different domains that have the ability to rank in the first place. And then you have to be able to post them. And then on top of that, you have to see which sites are blacklisted, which sites get indexed, which sites it prioritizes, which words it will prioritize that are connected to the word that you're inputting for your search words, all things like that, right? So it's actually in somewhat easier. So if you look at how Google, OpenAI, all of these models convert words into tokens, you'll see that as a random scenario, right, with OpenAI or something like that, that the might be 001 or something like that, right? Or 0010 or something like that, right? And if you can figure out those mathematical equations, you can figure out literally how connected words are to each other inside of those models, which means that you can then reverse engineer in the content that you're building for those models what words should be there to get your content prioritized. So it's a really long, convoluted system. And it means that SEO is harder, but it means that it's not nearly as technical. And it's a lot more of an ability of relationship management and building and kind of doing all these different sites and pages and stuff at the same time, and reverse engineering and a little bit of maths as well.
Okay. What do you feel like are the top mistakes that people are making these days?
In business, life, or SEO? No, trick.
Let's say business first. Again, you've really changed from really, I'd say, just being kind of an SEO consultant to you're an investor. You're involved in a lot of different projects. So in the business world, what's something that surprises you of like, man, I just see a lot of people making this type of mistake?
The number one thing is niche selection, right? So I've spoken to so many people. I've had people hire me for consulting that have chosen sites that are in the most random niche you will have ever thought of, right? It will be like, I had one guy who had like a chicken pet website and things. And I'm like, what do you think is the maximum ROI that you can get off of this niche? Okay. Realistically, right? If you were the number one website in this entire niche, and he's like, well, the commission is probably $4. Seeing him do the maths, and he's like, yeah, probably like $500 a month. And I'm like, and you just hired me for $1,500 an hour?
Right.
Like, doesn't make sense, right? So 100% the first thing is niche selection. And too many people just jump straight into it instead of actually taking some time, figuring out what would be the best, doing some maths, doing a spreadsheet of all the different options that you have, talking through some options, maybe contacting people in the niche or contacting sites and stuff and seeing how they're getting on. All sorts of things which people don't actually take into consideration in niche section to collect those data points and see which would be the best options. Do that as much as you can. If you can put 6 months of time into it, put 6 months of time into it, because then you will have the best niche that nobody has ever found in the world, right? And you'll be able to make money and have a literal money printer. The second thing I think is not either believing that they can sell their business or not building to sell their business, right? So even in my family, right? Like I have said throughout this entire time, and it's not just me that said this, right? There's other people in my family that our goal is to build to $1 billion valuation. However, my mom has routinely turned around and said to us every time that we cannot sell this business. This business is not in a position to sell. And I've always turned around to her and goes, we could sell this business tomorrow if we wanted to, right? But you need to also be in a mental position to be building to that exit and have exit scenarios in place and be able to know that, okay, this is the date that I do potentially want to exit this business, or this is the date that I want to go to another project or something like that. And generally speaking, the business that you're working on is not going to be the business that you're working on for life until you're through to a certain period in your stage in your life, right? And especially in SEO and especially in entrepreneurship and stuff, the number one key is adaptability. So being able to transition that business, being able to move things, being able to kind of have that adaptability and that flexibility gives you some serious leeway and some serious positioning against competitors. Because I would say that the number one position that people get themselves into is that they don't have that adaptability, they don't have that flexibility, they've overhired, they've put too much investment into X, and then Google algorithm has come around and it slapped them off the face of the earth, right?
Yeah.
All sorts of things like that do happen and can happen in SEO, and it's not a 100% guarantee, and you are reliant on Google. And I don't know what Google is going to do tomorrow. Nobody does in this industry. So you cannot put 100% of your guarantees, 100% of your life basket, everything into this, because again, you are going to be potentially burned. So adaptability is probably the kind of third key there.
I love it. And then what about SEO? What are you most looking forward to this year in the SEO world?
So I didn't go to many events last year. I think I went to 3 conferences last year. I've already booked 3 conferences this year. So I definitely want to go and attend some more stuff, see some presentations and stuff. I saw like 1 or 2 presentations last year from other people, and that was basically it. And there's certain people that I really like seeing speak, like Kyle Roof and Corey Turkberg-Gilbert and things and stuff like that. They're always bringing the heat. And then in terms of SEO, I'm looking forward to seeing where AI overviews go, because Google is starting to monetize it. They're starting to roll it out into transactional queries. They said last year that they had evidence that AI overviews increased the amount of clicks to websites, and then this year it's been shown that that's BS. Right. And Google lied to us. Shock, surprise, Pikachu face kind of thing. But I do believe that this year is going to be the year that AI overviews really do make a dent in a lot more people, because I think that people aren't seeing it coming as well.
I love it. Well, Charles, thank you so much for being here today. It's truly been an honor. Really excited. For people who want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, my Twitter @Charles_SEO, or you can just hit me up on LinkedIn, Charles Floate. Thanks for having me.